Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and listeners all over the world in 17 countries currently and in like 150 cities. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. And I say this every time, so anybody that listens often, like, come on, Jeff, change it up. But oh my gosh, I am so excited for this episode today. Our guest, David Paris, has... I can't say a story to tell because he's got like probably 50. He's lived that many years as a young man and just done some incredible things. And this is going to be an incredible show. But I'll just, before I get ahead of myself, which I often do, I just want Mike and Dave to say hello to each other. And I'll give you guys a second to do that.
Hey, guy, Mike, pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Jeff. And I'm so excited to be here, and thank you.
Dave, no, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it, and I cannot wait to hear the story. Wow, it's amazing.
Oh, yeah. And David's coming to us from Brooklyn, New York, I believe, or at least that's where you work. I don't know if you're living in Brooklyn or Manhattan. And,
born here, still here. Yep.
Nice. And unfortunately, I was telling Dave off the air, I was just in Manhattan and less than a week ago, and so it would have been so cool to hook up, but I unfortunately didn't get prepared for this show till a couple days ago, so we'll have to do it again sometime in the future. But first of all, where you can find David Paris again, at www.davidparis, and that's Paris books.com. Okay, that's the first spot. You can also find them at www.paradizodance.com. And then you can also find them at www.sellifeskills. Okay, I'm going to spell that out. sellifeskills.com. And this is where this show is going to be crazy, because if you're just like, wait a second, this guy's got these 3 different lives. Yeah, he's an author. He's a professional dancer. He's been a teacher for a long time now, doing some really cool work on social emotional learning, which the timing is just incredible for that because of what COVID has done to our youth. And so having someone with that expertise to get them coached back up is just going to be incredible. And so this is going to be a great show. But about our guest, David Paris is a 7-time Cabaret dance champion. Pasho, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're talking about 7's the number. Yeah. And he puts out, yes. For those of you that aren't on YouTube with us, yeah, we got 7 fingers up in the air. A 7-time Cabaret dance champion, a finalist on AGT, America's Got Talent, co-director of the acrobatic dance company Paradizo Dance with Zoë Klein, who now is out of San Francisco, which is where I'm 45 minutes from there, David, and Mike lives down in Southern California, so we might have to check out Zoe. He has performed in over 100 dance congresses around the world and has produced 13 instructional videos in Latin dance and partner acrobatics. David, here's a different part of him now, because I can go on and on for all that. Different part of David now is a director of social emotional learning at Middle School 88 in Brooklyn and has been teaching in New York City since 1993. He is a life coach with strategic intervention, a facilitator of nonviolent communication with NYCNVC.org, nycnvc.org, a classroom trainer, with Outward Bound, and a circle keeper with Planning Change. Definitely, David, make me come back to that one because I'm not familiar with that, but I love circle keeper. Love that. And then now, where we're going to spend a good chunk of our time, David Paris is an author of 4 books for adolescents and creator of social emotional learning curriculum for schools. So the majority of this episode will be discussing David's newest book a COVID story.
Yeah.
David unfortunately contracted COVID in March of 2020 and was hospitalized for 88 days and was in a medically induced coma for 32 days. Needless to say, David's life journey has been altered, and today we get to be the beneficiaries of his newfound perspective. David, thank you for sharing your life story with us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I hope I live up to 1/10 of what all those things I've been that you introduced me with. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to be here.
Well, the crazy thing, David, is it ain't about living up to them, because you've already lived it. It's already your DNA. You've already told that story. And again, just talking to you off the air briefly, you're a guy that's just going to continue to search to find a way to help make this world better. So reflected in what somebody who doesn't know you and spends a few hours researching you and says, God, thank you, Lord, for putting this man on the earth to guide our youth and to chase his dreams. And then to look at your background, it's ridiculous to see everything that you've done. And so, yeah, no, I'm not trying to sound corny, but man, you've already done it.
Yeah, for me, when I got sick with COVID, I was in the hospital. It was one of the first people in the United States who was severely sick. And it was a warning for lots and lots of people I know worldwide, because I am a pretty popular acrobatic dancer in a very small sliver of society of acrobatic dancing and the circus world. And they said, oh my God, this guy almost died. We're all in jeopardy. And that's before we were taking it seriously in the United States. So, and also my school community. So yeah, so that was my story back then. And I wrote the book about the experience because I wanted to give a glimpse of what it's like for somebody, not in a way that's going to bring people down. It's an uplifting story. It's a story about the amazing medical community. I know you're a registered nurse. Thank you so much for what you do. I had no idea what nurses do. They saved my life. Some of the doctors' decisions saved my life, and New Yorkers saved my life because they flattened the curve. And if they didn't flatten the curve, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have gotten the medical care that was given. So my story is both a thank you and a gratitude to the community, and it's a warning sign for everybody else. If you haven't gotten your vaccine, look, you don't want this. You don't want this disease. Believe me.
I love those words, and the call to action to get vaccinated. Yep. And yeah, it's just an opportunity for us again to come together as a world, not just a country, not a state, the world. And yeah, we say this often on the show because we're blessed to have incredible guests like you and people that think deeply about life and trying to pay it forward. But we're all in this thing together. And, you know, I think that's the challenge, and I'll be so interested, and I'm preaching to the choir because you know better than me, but nonviolent communication, the social emotional learning, you know, finding the value that connects people that are having this violence, of allow them to see different perspective and say, hey, we have this commonality. And let's use that to get us to come together and build community, which is what we're trying to do as a nonprofit as well. So really, yeah, excited to just get your expertise with things that we can do to make this world better. And then, you know, in your role as a teacher. And so we're going to get into all this stuff, but I know you just authored another book, 100 Community Building Games for Teachers, written by a teacher who's been there, done that, again, in New York City. So yeah, reach out and get that, and we'll let you talk about that later on. But I'm getting all fired up, man. Let's get into this thought of the day, because I'm real curious to see. So we always start the show with this, and then I'm just going to ask you, man, why did I pick that thought of the day for you out of a million quotes that I could have taken? This is the one after researching you that I said, that's David Paris. So here we go. And it's written by Helen Keller. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, vision cleared, ambition inspired, and success achieved. What are your thoughts on that, David?
I have two thoughts that come to mind. One, I've been challenged more than I ever have in my life. My body was challenged in staying alive. I was the sickest person in the hospital that lived with COVID, and fought for 30 days in a coma, and then significantly after that. And I experienced in the past year a level of suffering that 100 times worse than the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life every single day. And I reshaped my life from this experience. One, I thought my life was done before this. I was like, had a good life, approaching 50, thought it was over. And then when I was facing death, it said, no, 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 no. I want to live. There are things I need to do. I've done a lot, but I haven't done all the things I want to do. And when I think about that, I think about character, because um, it was only when I was pressed with death that I start realizing, I've been going at life all wrong. I've been seeking, you've listed all the things I've done, and I have done a lot. But when I almost died, I realized all this time I was seeking to do things to be happy instead of being happy as I was doing things. And that character, for my character in this past year, has changed partly from a shift of perspectives of, oh, life really isn't about what you do to get happiness. Life is about finding the happiness in what you do. And only because I suffer so intensely now, that if I don't experience, if I don't shoot, if I don't pursue that which I want, that which I'm passionate about, I'll actually feel more pain. And so when I hear that character creates, comes from suffering, I could see that. But then I also have my dance partner, my beautiful dance partner, Zoe, has this amazing son who's 2. And I've often questioned, do you need to suffer? And then sometimes I see him, and here's a guy who has a mother so devoted to him, creating a life where he gets to explore, just putting his hand through a cushion, through seeing the cars and going beep, beep. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much. You don't necessarily need that to experience a level of creativity and joy. So while character is shifted on a deep level, I also think there's an awareness of the pleasures of life that are available even without that. However, if you do have something that's gonna, challenge you in life, there's definitely a moment for building your character in it.
Man, you said a whole bunch right there and went deep right out of the gate, and just so interesting of how you were saying you were going at life all wrong. And it's just crazy when you look at your career again from an outsider's perspective of here's this guy who's achieved, and you talked about this small space, but it doesn't matter how big or small it is. You achieved an expertise within acrobatic dancing, and it doesn't matter. That's a huge achievement in itself. And then it just looks like you figured out how to take that work ethic, perhaps, and applied it into all these different parts of your life. And then for me to hear that you're going at life all wrong,
all wrong.
and then chasing happiness in the wrong way, and learning to see things from a different perspective, of which going through this COVID experience and you being on death's door has given you a sense of urgency to get living the right way. And man, how exciting is that? And that's one of the areas that I've been blessed. I'm a nurse, and I told you that off the air, and worked for 12 years in the trauma ICU at UC Davis Medical Center, which is a level 1 trauma center. And so when you're surrounded by death that way, you see, unfortunately, a new patient coming in every day, got shot, stabbed, or in a bad car accident, you start thinking, well, my time is coming soon. Because that's your normal. That's what you see. So you develop an appreciation for each day, which at this point in your life, you've grabbed a hold of that. And I'm so excited to see what the next 50 years brings for you, and the impact that you're going to have on the world. So let's get into this thing. I want to. We're not going to get into psychology because that's not what I do, but I'm really fascinated by your background. And I just I know you said you grew up in New York your whole life, but what was life like? How did you get just this diversity in in who you are. So what was life like growing up, and how did you get into dance and writing and everything else? But let's go back to just your early days.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite story is you grow up in the 80s, it's my teenage years in Brooklyn, and you do that, and you're in a war zone. You look at the person the wrong way, you're going to get jumped, if not killed. And it happens on a daily basis. You hear people. So while that's already a difficult way to grow up. I also had a punk haircut, had two earrings back then. And so my sister, who was a punk rocker in the early 80s, like definitely influenced me. And I went to school in Spanish Harlem. So I, at middle school, mind you. So, you know, at the very earliest ages, I was challenging authority, being like, this is now it's sort of like, you know, a lot of people will it's sort of like normal to challenge normalcy, but back then, you know, you looked the wrong way, you were inviting violence. And I did. I just because I was so against, I was like, there's something more to life than just everybody pretending things are fine. Things are crazy. And I often sought that, but I was also a football player. I was captain of the football team. I was the best in my position in Brooklyn. I loved destroying people, but I also loved them. I loved people also. So it was a very contradictory upbringing with a lot of tension. But the good things is you grow up in New York City, you grow up fast, or it's good and maybe not so good. So by the time I got to college, took a huge life change. Went to Hampshire College, a hippie school with no grades, no credits. Suddenly, all the structures of what you had to do were gone, and I found a bunch of people who partied a lot when they were younger, and then wanted to seek religious and spirituality together. I was involved in this community where you had to hug everybody before going to bed. We shared money. We shared everything. Yeah, it was right. It was really interesting. You know, we were trying to figure out life, one of these personal development places. We took tons of those type of workshops. And back then I was a religion major, and I went to India to study. I knew if I could just get the right guru, I'd break through and find the real depth of what society was about. And went to India. I learned, oh my God, I'm horrible at meditating. I was staring at a wall trying to understand God, and I was like, boy, all I can think about is chicken tikka masala, you know, or the vegan version of that in the ashrams. And I was just like, oh man, you know, I was like, I'd never, all this religion thing and mysticism thing, I want to pierce reality. It's not necessarily for God. I just love people. I love thinking. I was like, wow. I came to India, I discovered what I really want to be is a school teacher. And I said, I'm going back. I'm changing my major for my senior year. I did that, and I joined Teach for America. I was one of the third core year in 1993. Went to the roughest areas in the South Bronx and the roughest schools. Grew up real fast because these kids are amazing. They don't, if you're too mean, they turn off. If you're too nice, they'll run all over you. And they require a level of maturity of you that all my Teach for America friends were thrown into the fire of, like, you need to be your best self. And that means not assertive, not aggressive, not passive. And we got a big lesson in what it means to be a leader very, very early on in life. But it was there actually that I discovered, wait a second. I need to, when I was calling these kids' parents, a lot of them only spoke Spanish. And when I told them, you know, the kid wasn't acting right, and the kid was translating in Spanish, I know they weren't translating what I was saying. So I said, that summer, it's like, I'm going to Guatemala, doing an intensive. I got to learn Spanish. Went to Guatemala, learned enough to say some things. But the most transformational moment was one night we went to a club, and I saw the ugliest guy, really ugly, dance with like the hottest women in the club together, holding each other. I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen this before. This is incredible. I must learn how to do this. And I came back to New York City, got a friend of mine who was actually in a merengue band, and we took dance classes with the Mambo King, Eddie Torres. And that I took 5, 6, you know, at the time I was taking yoga 4 or 5 times a week. I shifted as fast as possible to salsa 4 or 5 times a week, and then going out every night. Had the blast, had the most intense experiences. And I think, if I remember, your original question is a little bit, who am I? I could keep going, but I just want to check in.
Oh yeah, no, your story is fascinating. Yeah, just keep going. This is awesome.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, from there, I was very into Latin dance. At the same time, I was doing great work at school as best as I could. I was out 2, 3 in the morning as I was teaching reading. I would like kind of almost fall asleep as I would be like standing up to the students. But I was just in love with dance so much. It was so great. And I begged my teacher, please let me join your student team. If I could just have one moment with that, I knew I'd be happy in life. I would put it on my gravestone, and everything else would be fine. That was my goal. And he always said no. And he said I wasn't good enough. I joined another team and joined another dance company. Said, will you take me on? They said yes. I don't know why they said yes, because I really was terrible. You know, they say to believe in yourself, and believe in yourself is great. I did really believe in myself. No matter how many women said no, I would ask somebody else to dance, you know, maybe 100 times a night. And no matter how many people times they said, oh, you weren't a good dancer, I didn't care. I loved it so much. This music was great, but connecting to people was great. Like, I got to do this. So I joined this other dance company. I think he did it out of pity, but he let me join the student dance team. I was terrible. But there was one day they said, you know, we're going to do lifts. And you remember, I was a football player, and boy, do I know how to move people. So while everybody else was struggling, I like flipped his wife over my shoulder, no problem. And he goes, I got a job for you. So what happened, all these salsa dancers would do these great, beautiful movements for 2, 3 minutes. I would come on stage, flip his wife in the air, catch her, walk off stage, and I got the most applause. It was the best. And I was just like, man, I finally, after all this time, I found my place in this world. And I did that for a number of years. And then shortly I said, you know, let me do my own thing. I started working with a lot of different women, salsa dancers, and just trained anybody who knew anything, an ice skater, Latin hustle dancer, ballet people, anybody knew anything. I paid money. It's like, teach me what you know. And it was hundreds of lessons over the course of years. I would take with anybody who would want to work with me. And people would do it. We did some decent shows, but it was only when I gave up on training salsa dancers to do acrobatics. I said, let me find an acrobat to do salsa. That's who I found my current dance partner, wife and ex-wife, Zoe. I found her. She's a circus artist in New York City, and we rocked the scene, and we rocked it in a funny way. The first time we did it, we did a show for we did a salsa dance with acrobatics, and people liked it okay. And it was only when our teacher said, you know, you're trying to fit in a box. Let the box come to you. And then we did something Zoe liked, which is just a whole piece of now you see it more often, but back then it was rare. We did an entire piece of just partner acrobatics running around here, but we try to accent the music and express dance through flips in the air, through a throwing around of the back. And people gave us standing ovations, and we said, all right, we got something. That led us to America's Got Talent. Let me know if I should stop, if I should keep rolling. I'll keep going. Okay. So in America's Got Talent, we were in the second season. People know us from the fourth season where we made the semifinals. In the second season, we tried out. We didn't make it past the there were 10,000 people at Jacob Javits Center. We didn't make it past the associate pre first rounds. We didn't make it past anybody. And they looked at us and they're like, you're average. We did almost the same routine 2 years later, but because we started performing more, we had more flair, and we had a good story. We just got married at the time, and they said, all right, we're gonna push you. And we made it semifinals, which was like, in my top 20 in our salsa scene. We made it far further than anybody else, just doing partner acrobatics. Our biggest number was when Zoe lifts me over her back. And I was 240 at the time. She's 100 pounds. And if you in the listening, if you want to check out something interesting, check out Paradizo Dance on YouTube. You'll see the clips. And we were a big hit for a while. From there, we launched into an excellent big career in America's Got around the world. And that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I did watch that I think tryout, not the tryout, but when you guys perform live for the judges on America's Got Talent. And I saw what exactly you're talking about, where Zoe kind of carried you on her back. Yeah. That was, incredible. Yeah. Pacho, you got to check that out. But yeah, so just so fascinating, still trying to figure out where do we take this? You got so much,
I can take it a few places if that's helpful.
Well, yeah, you go. I was going to have you go with your COVID stuff. I know that's been.
Let's jump to that for sure. So, what's interesting, Zoe and I had an amazing career. We did great. We'll talk a little bit more about the education later. Unfortunately, we fought a lot. And when we fought, I just knew I had to prove to her why she was wrong. And if I could just get the right words, I knew that our marriage would work. And apparently that was the worst thing I could ever do. And I didn't know that until we split up, because we went to a couples therapist and she introduced me, as you said, to nonviolent communication. And the nonviolent communication, instead of like being right, they say you want to be right or you want to be happy. I was like, I never believed in that. But it turns out there's something to it, because when we see somebody else, we judge somebody else, when we say what they should or shouldn't be thinking, it presents a violent energy, an energy that's only going to, and most of us, I'd say probably all of us, we grow up in an environment where we just need to control the other person. We need to tell them why they're wrong, and that our brain works in a way that we're thinking competitively rather than collaboratively. The nonviolent communication changed everything in my life. The nycnvc.org. It's changed my life. It's changed how I approach dance. It's approach training to students, because what it do is they say, instead of seeing the judgments, take all your judgments of what should or shouldn't be, what's good or evil, and just see what are people needing. Actually, before that, you say, what are you needing? And in those conflicts I had with Zoe, it was always, I was upset. You connect your feelings first, and then the need was, I wanted shared reality. There's something happening there. And for her, what I was eventually able to do is, I could see that she was feeling also angry, and she needed mutuality, because she was she didn't like the kind of choreography we were doing. I wanted trick, and acrobatic expression. She wanted more modern dance. And when you can connect to somebody's needs, in the Harvard School, I think it's the positions and interests, rather, people's interests rather than their positions. It's similar. You're going to create dialogue. And Zoe and I are best friends now. She's actually living with me for this next 2 months, even though we're split up, because our connection is that strong, because we got to see things. And I said, oh my God, how many more marriages could be saved? We could communicate better. So I bring that to middle school. I'm a social emotional learning director at Middle School 88. The moment I trained in this nonviolent communication, I was like, all right, it's a little too late for me, not too late for our young ones. And I bring circle. We do a lot of restorative justice work, where we connect on who we are, and then we work on what are we feeling and what are we needing in any conflict. And I know that it's making a big difference when kids can, because they're always told what they should or shouldn't do and why they're wrong. And I do, when I'm a teacher, I see some kid throw a paper ball at somebody else. Boy, in my head, I'm thinking, you're just trying to mess with my lesson. But then when I think, all right, when am I feeling frustrated? What do I need? I need order. Okay, what's he need? He's delighted and he's needing play. So then I talked to him. I said, hey, look, I see you're playing around. You have some need for play. Is there another way? We would call, there are lots of strategies to achieve the need. And when you can look at different strategies and you still get your same need met, then we're on the same page. And that kind of taking away the violent energy and going into collaboration changes both dance relationships, teacher relationships, kid relationships. And I'm super passionate about this possibility for communication. I've seen it with adults, and I've seen it with dancers. I've seen it with kids.
Man, yeah, that's... Pashito, you got something?
Oh, I'm just going to sit here and listen. This is fascinating, David, really. And especially that you can do that as a role, as a teacher, as an adult, to actually communicate with kids, because I have 4 kids and I find it incredibly difficult. Also, I have a basketball team, and a lot of times just getting them to talk is the hardest part. So I am sitting here listening, absorbing every word. I appreciate it. And you've unlocked something here, no doubt. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. One other thing, I think about basketball a lot. I've been working with the basketball team in high school because for a lot of times you see a lot of conflict, sometimes between players, but often between the players and the referee, right? And they get really mad at the way things. And I think an acknowledgement, the options are explode or just keep it inside, right? And if we if we extend those options as a basketball player to notice your feelings, noticing what choices you have within your anger. I know that for me, the moment I was able to distinguish that what I feel with my anger and what I do with my anger, that there's a space in between there, the moment I create and elongate that space, the better my choices are with my anger. I never liked it when somebody said, don't be angry. I said, notice your anger, let it, and then make the best decision with that. Like when in my conflicts with Zoe, yeah, I'd get mad all the time if she want to do one move and I want to do another move. Or I was mad at the competition judge who definitely should have gave us first place, but gave us second place. I'm still mad at a few of those things, you know. um, I'm noticing for me in those moments, there's a space before I react, and I'm angry. I'm needing a shared reality, perhaps, or understanding. And then for that judge and the referee, they're needing a set. They have a also an equal sense of order that they're probably needing as well. But there's so much that could happen when we have a space between our feelings, noticing our feelings, making valid, like you said, you're for kids and you want your basketball players to talk. The thing I always say is that for many kids, they don't notice that what they say, or when they notice what they say or what they feel means something, then they're going to connect to it. And they've been taught at like the very earliest age, their feelings mean nothing. Their feelings don't change what happens in reality. So why feel something, right? So once they can they can connect to their feelings and then connect to what they can connect to the needs behind their feelings and then strategically make decisions about making their life better in some way, they're going to articulate those things that are now unconscious and potentially communicate them to their coaches or their parents or teachers.
So many great resources. Again, nycnvc.org is one. And I got to unpack a few things, and not to take away from that, but in hearing about your challenges with Zoe early on, of you wanting to prove her wrong, and then you learning that was actually a violent kind of act according, which is just interesting for me. I don't associate, but it makes so much sense with what you're saying. And then in my mind, I go to Gary Chapman, Dr. Chapman's 5 love languages, which is another really good resource for people that just want to get along better with people. And then, I think one of the great injustices we do to youth is not allow them to feel. And so I'm sure you're familiar with Mark Brackett, the PhD out of Yale, who wrote Permission to Feel. And oh my gosh, that's an incredible book, incredible resource. If there's any listeners that have anybody, young or old, and just want to help them understand their emotions, because it is the key to behavior. And so many times there's just such a disconnect there. And he uses this simple acronym called RULER. And I don't want to get into that so much, but just an incredible insight that you're sharing. And then you can just see your heart on your sleeve with your students, and being patient, and knowing that people behave in the way that they behave for a reason, good or bad. And I love you dropping some Viktor Frankl on them of, of having this stimulus and then taking advantage of that pause and then realizing, okay, if I can get into that space, now I can give a response that doesn't come from my amygdala, and it comes from my prefrontal cortex, which again, for youth, they don't have that ability yet. So they need people like you and me and my Pasho and other amazing teachers out there to help them figure out how to do that with the skills that they currently have. And so, man, just incredible stuff. But let's get into the most recent challenge that you had and getting COVID and going back to March of 2020, and share that story with the listeners, because unfortunately, it's just one of those things. And I'm not trying to judge, but millions of people have died, and we still feel certain segments feel like it's not true, and so it's just crazy to me when you work in that space. My wife is a nurse as well. Unfortunately, she had a family member that had lost 16 relatives to COVID. 16. So let's get into your story though, talk about your book and everything else.
Yeah, the book is an oral history of my experience. It's not just my story. I try to include the doctors, the nurses, the psychologist, my family, and friends, all sharing my journey. I woke up one morning after getting COVID from my brother. I woke up after 7 days, sleeping in front of the fridge. And when I was there, I noticed I couldn't breathe. And I thought, oh boy, it was that second week that's really going to get you. So I make my way to a hospital, and I go from short of breath to can't breathe at all. The moment I was in there, they put oxygen on me. Suddenly I could breathe. I was like, oh, I haven't been breathing actually for a week. I just couldn't tell. And so many people, like you said, when I was in the hospital, that's where people were sharing, no, this thing is, and I have a lot of friends who don't know anybody who is sick. You go to the hospital, suddenly every single person there knows multiple people who have died, and all of them have some, not all of them, most people have some version of symptoms that even if they survive, it's still a rough go. So I was there for 5 days. I could tell you I was hallucinating my brain because I was yelling at all these people that weren't there. I thought they were there, but they weren't. My oxygen level was at 70, which, as you know, is like super, super low. Yeah, it was really so. They intubated me after 5 days. They noticed I was not going to make it. After 1 day of intubation, it was still not enough. They put me on a machine called ECMO, which does the work of the heart and the lungs. Right. So the nurses know, or doctors know, if you're an ECMO, your chances are it's like a Hail Mary. Very few people come out of that. Like even at the time, I actually thought I was going to be fine. I before they intubated me, they asked, they're like, any last words? I'm like, yeah, let me get some chicken sausage when I wake up, because I thought like I didn't know so many people were dying. I just kept it, and I also thought that statistic wise, I wasn't a believer in God. I was like, I'm like a maybe, but I knew the statistics were somebody's 48 and relative good health, they should be fine. But I had a crazy reaction. Then my condition went from my heart stopped. Once I was on ECMO machine, my heart stopped 4 times. They had to resuscitate me. I was the sickest person. They told my family he's probably not going to make it. And then over the course of 32 days, I slowly got better every single day. As a nurse, like my inflammation markers were 2,000 something, and that's like pretty high, right? And so
crazy high. And then just even back being on ECMO. That machine will do the work of your lungs, and it's basically taking you on bypass, and all your blood gets through that, and that delivers where you get oxygen to keep you alive, because obviously all your organs need oxygen, and you weren't able to do that, and just as someone with a little bit of knowledge of ECMO, you were sick. Crazy sick. And even with COVID, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but when patients were getting intubated, the chances of you
20%.
What is it?
20% were living.
Yeah. And then I don't know what they would be for a patient when you take that next step of going to ECMO.
2%.
Yeah. So I mean, it's it's a miracle that you're here and able to have this conversation. To be honest, a lot of patients going through what you would have went through would be so short of breath still that they wouldn't be able to get more than a couple words out at a time.
Yeah, Zoe and I are going to do our first show this Saturday. My recovery is a blessing. I know that when I was in the recovery in the rehab center, I could tell you there are people who are going to have oxygen for life. People could only move 1 or 2 limbs. What it did to people was it's the next wave of, it's not really in the public how bad it's destroying people, but it's not just the deaths. It's the people talk a little bit about brain fog and fatigue. It's the effect it's had is far worse than that for most people. And I don't see that being shared that much. But the upside to that for me is I got to experience the best nurses in the world, the best aides in the world who took care of me. And as a single guy, I could tell you, I was like, oh, there's a safety net there for people. My God, this is the best thing in the world. And it turned into like a horrible experience to love. You know, I got so much love from people who cared and took care of me from 5:30 to like 11 at night. And I could tell you, I was a little wacky. I was having some wacky dreams, like I had to wiggle. I could barely, when I woke up, I could only move my right arm a little bit and I could wiggle slightly back and forth. But I took that wiggle and I tried to get out the bottom of the bed because I was on a pirate ship and I just had to get away. And like every night I had different versions of that. I was like, oh, this guy's really out there. I remember, it's funny, on the charts, they said I was really, they did wonder how conscious I was. I was super conscious, but I was conscious in a weird way, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the medication. It's the hypoxia, the lack of oxygen going to your brain from you being so sick. It's the sundown. I mean, you take, patients get to the hospital, everything is off. I mean, we're normally sleep from like 10 to 6. You're not getting any sleep. You got a nurse coming in the room, especially for you. They probably didn't leave the room. Lights are on all the time. And
that's right. The whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it just totally disrupts every rhythm that you would have. And that's what just goes back to, not to mix this up into building community, but, one of the diseases that's never talked about is loneliness. That's right. And it just kind of takes me back there of needing people to allow us to have these interactions, because when you don't, we're going to start to not think exactly as clearly as possible. And then we start to question ourselves and start behaving in ways that we normally wouldn't behave when all we need is some human contact and some people to.
And the nurses there did that. When these nurses gave me human contact, I could tell you I've never felt more lonely in my life. My mother, who's suffering from dementia, she's doing some crazy things. I didn't understand it. But when you experience that depth of loneliness, it's the little love that the nurses give you is golden. There's no money value you could say when I get a smile, when they move my pillow, when they help me with pressing a remote because I don't have the strength to press the remote. And in addition to the physical care, the love made all the difference in the world. And I gotta say, I would use any excuse to get 5 minutes with a nurse. And they were amazing. They also put me in touch with my family. I got a lot of FaceTime visits. They, even now, but I don't, probably now too, they don't allow people to visit you. So the loneliness was intense. And I could say one of the reasons I also wrote the book is for people who care give, whether they're COVID or elderly, whatever it is. That work you do is miraculous and so makes a difference. I'm eternally grateful. I can never take another step in my life without being thankful, because people were there for me. I just want to be there for them. And I don't know if people know how powerful that is when you do that. So I wanted to share a lot of that in the book. But if I could share the other thing, there was a lot of big lessons I had in the book, and I'll just share one of them. One of them was actually, I was just grateful to live when I woke up. And there was a moment after waking up that I had a thought, and I said, you know what? Maybe I'm not so lucky after all. Maybe if I look at it, maybe I'm unlucky, because I'm young to be, I was healthy. Why am I the person that gets sick? My brother wasn't sick. And in that moment, I went from being grateful to being really depressed. And the more I had that thought, it fed itself. And it fed itself for a week of the most intense depression I think I've ever had in my life. And then I remembered the story that I never understood till now, which was there's this elder, a Native American elder, who was talking to his grandson about two wolves that are inside of us. And there's this mean, negative, angry, jealous wolf. And then there's also a giving, loving, grateful wolf. And they're inside of us fighting for attention at all times. And the grandson asked, well, which wolf's going to win? And the grandfather said, the one you feed. And I thought to myself, I never got that. I never understood it. And it was only in that moment where it's like, my God, I'm feeding this depressed wolf. And I get it. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't there. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not upset that it can't move. That's going to take a year to get my body back. But my God, I'm feeding something that is a loop of logic that only allows you to see like this. And when you see your thoughts as not something that's a true reflection of the way reality is, but as a choice, you can also choose to see things differently. And that story, I go back to it a lot in the book, and I live it really every single day, because I do get hit with choices every single day about how I want to see things.
Yeah, no, I love that story. And I did get to, not read your whole book, but the majority of it. Some really cool things, and incredible that you've made such a recovery. I know you talked about your shoulder injuries. I know at a time in the book, they thought they were going to have to amputate 3 fingers. And that's where it's your,
only a little piece, not so bad.
yeah, it's really incredible that you're going to be performing. And, because that's what they're finding. That's what's tricky with this is the virus causes all these microemboli, little blood clots.
That's right.
That can
get right there.
All these different, all over our body.
All over the body.
Everybody's different. And so for you, they ended up clogging up your capillaries, and then you didn't have any blood flow going to your fingers there. Luckily, they were able to restore that for you. But sometimes that happens. Of brain fog is those microemboli are clogging up some of our arteries up there, and now parts of our brain aren't getting the blood flow that they should, and so we're just obviously not going to perform as well. Your heart, same thing. Lungs, same thing. And that's what's so, where unfortunately this is going to be a long-term impact of this, because they're still researching it, still trying to figure out how to make heads or tails of it. And I love how you started the show with encouraging people to get vaccinated, because this is, affects us all.
It does. And the only thing I could say for people who are affected by it, I know what you're going through, and I know it's rough. For me, the thing that I always say is, when I talk about the pain I had about losing this little finger, that to me is 1/100th of the mental pain that I've had to go through. And people aren't really talking about that so much, and it's real. And the only thing for me that makes the difference, I knew in the hospital bed, I woke up one night and said, I'm an acrobatic dancer. And when I knew that, I was like, I'm on a mission. And so for this past year, the thing that's helped me the most is be a writer, be an acrobatic dancer, be a passionate contributor to the world. And when I can connect to that, I get out of my depression, and I get into the things that make me happy to live.
David, I have a question. When you run into someone who does not want to get vaccinated or doesn't believe in it, how does that make you feel? Do you say anything to them? Do you give them your experience?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that people rarely change their mind about anything. Like I always say, how many political conversations have you had with anyone where their mind changed? So there's a great New York Times article that addresses how to potentially present facts without being dogmatic. And I think that's the best way to do it. How do I personally feel? I understand that we live in a country where there's just lots of skepticism, and for good reason, about what government says and about what society says, because things change a lot. So I get it. I can just offer, I don't personally get upset because I understand where it comes from. And yet, it's painful because those decisions aren't, when people say I'm free to do what I want, it's they're choosing a definition of freedom, which doesn't include, you don't have the freedom to set fire in a movie theater. So I have some mixed feelings about it. But I understand where it comes from, and I do what I can to try to influence people the way I can. And the book is part of that. Can I move to another spot I just realized I'm unfortunately almost out of battery. Can I move to another spot yeah?
Yeah, I'll pause this real quick. Yeah, so just incredible story, and just how your life has changed and the clarity that you have now. I do want to just unpack one thing that you mentioned is interesting to me: the mental pain that you feel, and then how you start to, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you correct me if I'm wrong, but you feel that, and then it sounds like that takes you to dancing,
yes,
to these other parts, to writing,
Yeah.
And it sounds like, I don't know if you're conscious of that or not, but it's like, hey, I'm feeling this. Okay, here's the solution to deal with that. And then through dancing, same, you're going to get that runner's high where your body releases those endorphins. And if you're having physical and mental pain, just by taking that action is going to significantly decrease that pain. So what do you mean by that? And maybe just share some insight for the listeners on that.
Yeah, this will be especially useful for those people who have gone through any sense of, I've talked to a lot of people who are struggling with COVID mentally, and that means anxiety for the most part, or depression. And so for me, my system is hypersensitive right now. The good news is I can function in small bursts really well with people and in situations. The hard parts is usually waking up from naps or sleep, because one of the things, and in the book, I try to go after the psychological aspects and the help I've gotten. Part of that help, I have a somatic experience therapist who was saying, when you wake up, that's just like waking up from the coma again. And there's the part of the body that has to process it. And it's so interesting for me because a lot of the therapy I've gotten has been try to feel what's going on for you. But if you're a victim of trauma, feeling your therapy is the worst. Feeling what you're feeling is the worst thing you can do. It's like, that's like they say you need to titrate it in small little bits. And so I found it. What was useful for me was it acknowledge what was going on. And then move to that which brought me to a better place. And it's funny. In November, I took one of Tony Robbins' workshop. I'm a big fan of his, and I found myself suddenly. He got me connected to my passions again, and I was finishing a book at that time, and I was just like, wow. The more I can, when I was writing, I wasn't connecting to why I was writing. And when I wrote as an act of revolution, as an act of liberation, as an act of connection, I'm writing this book because I want a higher level of consciousness. Boy, you can see it even probably in my face now. I'm like, this, and when I can connect to that spirit, if I don't connect to that spirit, I sink like a boulder going off the cliff. But if I invoke that, and it's I'm no longer as somebody who's been through near-death experience. When you first wake up, you're just so shocked and so happy to be alive. But when the suffering comes afterwards, it's like, it's really way harder than anything I've ever experienced before. You can't just be who normally. I'm a pretty happy guy and a go-getter. All of a sudden, if I didn't consciously work on making my passions in the front of my brain, I would sink. And that meant dancing, that meant writing, that meant connecting to people. Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
I forgot the question.
No, you totally did. And I love how you say consciously work. I think that's where it's challenging in life. And obviously technology is amazing. Mike's in Pedro, you're in Brooklyn, I'm in Vacaville. We're having an incredible conversation that's going to get shared in 17 countries, and lots of people are going to be able to listen in. But it's that conscious work that you now have been given this gift to realize that the true gem of life is within that space, right. And now you're tapping into that consciousness through your writing, through your dance, through your interactions now with Zoe and her young 2-year-old, and just so cool that knowing, you, the brief time that you're going to be sharing it with all the students that you come in contact with, the people that cheer you on the dance floor, and all the other different parts of your life. And that's what we need. Just building community through those shared values of consciousness, and whatever that means for each person, with no judgment.
That's right. And it's going to be, it's funny. There are 4 or 5 things I want to say to that, if that's all right. But one is like, I just, 2 months ago, I called up the producer for America's Got Talent that I work with. I'm like, hey man, I got this great story. Come back from COVID. At the time I could barely do any lifts, but I'm like, maybe if I can get my way in, that'll help motivate me to do it. And he told me, sorry, maybe next year. We already filmed the season. We got everybody already. In my brain, I was like, maybe they already had some other COVID recovery stories, so let it go. And then that next morning, I practiced. It was training with Zoe. She's standing my hands. I'm doing push-ups as she's standing my hands. And suddenly I'm like, why am I doing this? And I realized I'm relearning the same lesson I got in coma, which is, again, if I'm thinking of the destination and happiness as only what I'm going to achieve, I'm missing out on the moment. And I was just like, what is it that I enjoy about this acrobatic stuff? Is it the pleasure of doing something, or is it impressing people? And really, that's why I joined football back in high school. I thought if I joined the football team, I was going to get all the girls, and then I would be happy. It turned out I got no girls, and it was because Brooklyn football is not very big. It's got very few fans. But like the reality is a shift of why I want to do it. And then for the first time in 20 years of acrobatic practice with Zoe, I didn't do it for a goal. I did it with this like, well, let me just appreciate what is the joy in moving somebody else in the air, and what's the connection. What are each of us in doing, and why is this pleasurable? And that rehearsal was in some ways the best rehearsal I had in my life, because I took away the destination. And when I said like what when you connect to values, one of the things I'm doing is a goals app, social emotional learning goals app, where kids get to connect to whatever goals are important for them. And yeah, it doesn't matter if your goal is to get really great at Fortnite, or your goal is make some money, and whatever it is, I'm going to help you achieve your goal, because I know when you do that, you're going to have the skills to achieve whatever you want, across academics and across your life. And when you connect to that, you have a different experience and connection to yourself, and then you'll be giving something different to the world. So yeah, connecting to values is everything.
I love that. And that falls right under our definition of creativity, is overcoming fear and be willing to share your gift with the world. And yeah, it's just every person has been given this gift, but can Mike help take care of ourselves so we can be in that space to be able to see and honor that sometimes when other people can't see and honor it in themselves because they're not quite yet in that space, and then to give them that encouragement, give them the positivity, give them the belief that they can do it, and then pretty soon they don't need us doing it. They feel it and seek those opportunities like you are now. And how cool is it for you to have had different reasons in the past, and now just being in that space to say, I'm just gonna, especially someone who's competed at such a high level, of just, I'm gonna take all that stuff out because I already know that's within the process.
That's right.
And now I'm just gonna truly get to experience the joy of lifting up my partner and someone that I've deeply connected with for a good chunk of my life. And here we are, divorced, but still in harmony. Yeah. Man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm wearing a long sleeve, but I got a crazy amount of goosebumps just thinking about seeing you two on there. And definitely, I'm sure we'll be able to find that on your Facebook or something when you guys perform, because, yeah, I got to check that out. But, yeah, it's... take a step back here, because obviously you're a big role model, inspiration for so many people in all these different parts of your life, but give you an opportunity to thank somebody that did that for you.
That's right.
Who's a teacher, mentor that's been an essential ingredient? I got to drop the name of our show, an essential ingredient in your life. At any point, you can go from, when you were 5 to where you are now. It doesn't matter who.
Yeah, there's just one person who he's my acrobatic dance teacher. He's passed away. His name is Artie Phillips. And I always went to a lesson with Artie Phillips with 5 different moves I wanted him to teach me. And almost every single time, the lesson was the preparation for just one move. And we would practice almost like the Karate Kid. We'd practice just that connection of what it means. And he explained to me that to do lifts is not the guy lifting the woman. It's working in combination with each other the right way. And what does it mean to create a dance from moving somebody else together? And that means that the woman has to move or the flyer, and he actually would be the flyer and the bass with his partner. And so he knew both sides. And so many times the teachers are the guys who are just like, yeah, just work it or make it happen. And he taught me, no, it's about communication through your body, through through language, and having the right information to create beauty. So when you see the videos, you'll see a level of smoothness there. That's Artie Phillips. That's not me. That's my intelligence to seek him out. And for 7 years, there wasn't a lesson I didn't leave feeling nurtured, loved, and I try to pass it on to every student, both in performance and in my instructional lessons, whether they're learning the dirty dancing move for their wedding, or learning a dip, or they want a free backflip. Whatever it is, it involves verbal and physical communication with the right information. I was blessed to meet this man who taught it to me.
I love that. And I'm going to take it in a weird direction too, but on something that you said really, I think would be very important for a listener: intelligence to seek it out. And so again, getting to know your story back, you were working in Spanish Harlem. And so you realized there was a gap in the way that you needed to communicate. And so you went to Guatemala.
That's right.
In Guatemala, you now see this dance. So you've always found a way within something inside you that's allowed you to go seek help. And so my question to you is, unfortunately, in my role on a community college, for a chunk of time, I worked as a college nurse in the health center. So students would come to me when they have any kind of physical, mental challenge going on. And unfortunately, I can't tell you how many students would come in and tell me they didn't have one person that they could turn to in their life. And so it was a blessing that they came in seeking help. But I know just our human nature, it's so hard for people to seek help when, to be honest, that's what I see in you. You wanted to learn Spanish, you sought help. You wanted to learn how to dance, you sought help. So what tip would you give to a listener who's just afraid to ask for help, even in the things that they're passionate about, such as you? What insight do you have for them?
I'd say two things. Honor your fear. If you're feeling fear, it's there for a reason. You can investigate it. Usually when you're not seeking help, it's because you think nobody can help you. So we honor that notice, and honoring it doesn't mean listening to it. Honor means just notice it. And then do some testing. Is that true? Is there nobody that can help? You don't know until you try. I know for me in salsa dance, I needed my friend Anna, who's a merengue bass player, to go with me to class. I would never have done that on my own. I needed to, and she was, she had some connection to the Latin community, but having her there made the difference. When I was taking lessons for acrobatics, it was getting somebody else to do it with me. So I would say, if you're feeling hesitant, don't try to do it on your own. You don't even need, there's a lot of, you could pay for an expensive life coach for $250 an hour, or you can just get a friend to say, hey, look, I'm going to do this time. Will you stay on the phone with me? One of the things I teach kids a lot when they're going after their goals is just have somebody do it with you. So that would be my biggest advice.
I love it. Let's get into real quick. I'm going to be respectful of your time, but got to tap into your expertise as an educator. And I know you've talked about the social emotional learning, but I know you also have a new book that's coming out, not your COVID one, but the community building for teachers. Talk about why that's important. And off the air, I was sharing with David that there's a new study out of Harvard Business Review that 1 in 3 teachers is thinking about leaving the profession from all the challenges that they face now in teaching. And I sure hope our society can get it right and figure out police, fire, teachers, nurses, doctors. There's so many valuable positions that we just really don't value for some reason. And I cannot think of a more valuable position to take in our country or any country than raising the youth that are our future. And so, get into your community building book that you have, and why do you feel like there's a need for that?
I could tell you, the police came to our school one day and said, "Look, we need to improve connections between the police and the kids." And so what we did is we had about like 20 police officers from the precinct come down with about 200 students, and we had them play a game. We said, "Line up by your birthday," and once they lined up in one line, we said, "Great. Now, while staying on that line, reverse your order. And the moment you step off that line, you have to start again." And from that experience, suddenly there was a lot of tension between the communities. Barriers were broken down. After that, we had a speak out where police officers talked about their lives, and then kids got to ask them questions. The experience was great. I know that when we can have experiential games that are not just here's the instruction, this is what you need to learn, but when the bonds can be built through this type of game, classrooms change. How do I know that? It started 25 something years ago. A theater teacher came in my class, and I was teaching English at the time, and had kids act out certain scenes from the Phantom Toll Booth. And all of a sudden they were engaged in a way I've never seen them engaged. I went to Outward Bound and was like, "Look, teach me what you know about how to develop these games." Over the course of 20 something years, I read every single book possible. And in my opinion, this sounds a little harsh, none of them were good. None of them. They were often done in these long narratives. They weren't broken down. Teachers don't have time to read that narrative. It took me 20 years to get through them. So being a teacher, I know what the teachers need. So I wrote a book. Like, I hope I live this in my life. If I see something wrong, I'm going to try to fix it myself. And that meant if there's not a book out there, I'm going to do it. So over the last set of years, I took all the games that are out there, tried them out in school, which ones work, which ones don't work. I made them as clear as possible. It's available for free. If you email me, I'll send you a digital copy. It's my pleasure. There are 100 of them. All of them work. All of them create that special bond. And it's really not out there. There are lots of books out there and games, none of them for teacher by teachers, which is what I'm calling this book, 100 community games for teacher by teacher. And I think it's a great resource. It's like 5 or 6 steps for each game. Teachers who don't have time to read very much. And I'm pretty sure it's going to transform every classroom and advisory or social emotional learning class, after school, church group, whatever. It's going to be for everybody.
Man, I love that. And I'm definitely going to get a copy of that baby. Cool. I love that stuff. That's what our nonprofit C4 Leaders is about. It's about building community and building connections. And I hear everything that you're saying. It's just all about relationships. And when we know who each other are, then we can see each other truly for who we are, right, without any judgment. And just to be able to take a step back. Oh man, Jeff must be having a bad day, because normally he's not like that. Or yeah, Jeff has got a little bounce to his step. I wonder what's going on that's good in his life, and having those conversations. And you do that by reading your book, 100 Community Games for Teachers. Yep, written by a teacher. I love that. I love that. So yeah, we're gonna get you out of here, but I have one last thing I want to ask. And John Alston has an amazing quote that I love, and it's about legacy. And I think you're in such a great space to really take a second and think about this. But the quote is this: the only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. So what is it that you want to leave behind for the people that have witnessed your life?
Yeah. Can I say a few things?
Yeah.
I wrote 4 adolescent novels. I'd love to write 2 or 3 more. I did finishing 100 community building games. I'd love to do the nonviolent communication version of that we talked about earlier. I'd love to leave. There are a few more acrobatic tricks and dances I want to do. I had a kids performing team. I'd love to do that. I'd love to participate in a circus school where acrobatics becomes a focus of what's possible in one's life, and then get to transfer to academic skills. So if I could do 1 or 5 and a critical thinking curriculum as well. It's another big passion of mine. I didn't talk about today, but it's a passion. If I can pass those things along with me, the moment they start lowering me in the grave, I'm like, I did good. And that for me is super important.
Nice, man. Well, we are blessed to have crossed paths and to witness the person who you are. And I know I feel incredible for the students that are in your area. And then now all the books, everything else. So parts of you are all across the world, with people getting to experience who you are as a person. And as one of the hosts on Life's Essential Ingredients, we can't thank you enough for coming on. I know my Pachito usually gets us out of here. Pachito, give them the goods, baby.
Wow. Usually I say a little more. I'm not going to lie, David, but I was just enthralled with every word you were saying. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom, everything you've gone through. And you're one of those people that truly make the world a better place. And we appreciate it and thank you, and keep going. We need more. Thank you.
All right. Again,
I'll see you in New York City, right?
Oh, definitely. We're going to come back to that in a second. It's been David Paris on Life's Essential Ingredients. He's got a bunch of ways to find him, but I'll just give you one here at the end of the show. DavidParisBooks.com. DavidParisBooks.com. He's going to share the link for his newest release of the 100 community building games for teachers, written by a teacher, and we'll put that up so people can have access to that. Yeah, David, you get us out of here with any last closing thoughts and comments.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think we covered a lot of great stuff. If you want to track me down David Paris Books. There's some great YouTube links for adolescents that are really, really fun. Anybody want a free copy of anything, just email me. I'll send you a digital copy. It's my pleasure. Looking forward to whatever we are able to do. And thank you so much. It's an amazing experience.
Thank you. Pachito, you know what we say when we get out? Boom, that just happened. Another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. Thanks for listening and take care. We'll see everybody next week.